Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hi and welcome to episode 155 of the English with Kirsty podcast. And today, just before I get into the main topic for the episode, I wanted to mention that it's really easy to contact me if you want to do that. I was speaking with somebody this morning who discovered English with Kirsty through my podcast, and that's always good, whether it's somebody who wants to start English lessons with me or somebody who wants to tell me what they've learned through the podcast or where in the world they are or what they'd like to see more of on the podcast. So there are a couple of ways you can do that. You can send an email and you can send it to podcast@englishwithkirsty.com. So Kirsty is Kirsty. So podcast@englishwithkirsty.com. Or on every show notes page there is a contact form. So if you'd rather use the contact form, you can go to the show notes page for this episode, which will be englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 155. So if you want to speak to me, if you want to get in touch about language courses, or if you just want to give me some feedback about the podcast, then those are two ways that you can do that. So this week I wanted to try something a bit new, both on the podcast and the blog, and it was to try and generate some discussion, because I think when we're looking at resources for people who are interested in business English, it's really easy to come up with a bunch of vocabulary that people can use and just to say, you know, when you're in this situation, you should say this, but life doesn't always work like that. I mean, it's good to have some standard phrases to learn, but it's also good to have the opportunity to practice talking about what you think about certain topics, because in doing that you can practice lots of things. You can use the new vocabulary that you've learned, you can practice expressing your ideas, you can work on your grammar as well, because you're constructing your own language, whether that's written or spoken language. So it's a really valuable exercise because it's helping you to express yourself, and I think that's a problem that a lot of people have. For example, they don't feel so bad about going into a meeting. You can prepare for a presentation and know your presentation really well and then deliver it, but as soon as you have to answer questions or to chat to people with a cup of coffee, then some people feel more stressed then, because you have to be spontaneous and you can't just rehearse what you're going to do because you don't know what the other person's going to say. So this idea where we have a topic and some questions about the topic, I decided to try that to see if people wanted to engage with it. So basically I put up a post on my blog, which I'll link to, and it's got some questions on it about a topic that I wanted to talk about this week. There are a couple of other resources as well. So there is a TED Talk, because the whole idea came from when I watched a TED Talk earlier in the week. So I've linked to that. Then I wrote an article on my private blog around this topic, so I've linked to that as well. And then there are some questions for discussion. So my idea was, if you have something you want to say and to join in the discussion, you can come to this page on the blog and you can use the comments feature there and let me know what you think, or you can send me your comments directly using the ways that I've just mentioned that you can contact me. So the easiest way is probably to email podcast@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can use the contact form on the show notes page to do that. So you can send any thoughts you have in writing that way, or if you want to send a sound file, you can also just attach that and send it to podcast@englishwithkirsty.com. You can't do that on the web form. You can't attach files. So if you want to send me a sound file, you're going to have to do it by email. But yeah, I just thought that it would give people a way to give either spoken or written feedback on a particular topic. I'm trying to keep them business English topics. It's something that I started doing in my Facebook group. So if you're interested in being part of the Facebook group as well, you can find the link to that on the show notes page. And sometimes I post a business related article or talk and then ask some questions about that and try and generate a discussion. But I thought we could also bring that out into the wider group of people who read and listen to information on the English with Kirsty site. And doing that makes it active, because a lot of the activities we do are passive learning. So if we read something, it's passive. If we watch something, it's passive. You can still work on understanding what you're watching, but it's not active in that you're not actively participating. But sometimes the things that people struggle with the most are the active ones. So for me, when I was learning languages, it was definitely speaking was harder for me than writing. But also writing took me some time. Sometimes I don't think so much about it now, but I certainly remember at the beginning I would spend ages looking at a comment just in a Facebook group that people would forget about in a couple of days. It's not there. It remains in the Facebook group, but it gets pushed right down very quickly. But I would spend maybe half an hour thinking about how I want to write my 5 lines of Turkish text, because it bothered me so much that I wanted it to be right. And whilst it's good to be a perfectionist like that, it's good to want everything to be right. It's a lot of time. If you're working with English in a business context, you don't always have this much time. So if you can get some practice talking about things or writing about things somewhere that isn't connected to work and somewhere that is positive towards people who are learning a language, then that's a good thing. So if you want to engage with this, then you can come over to the show notes page and find out about it. So the topic I had was I watched a TED talk that said why working from home is good for business. And so basically the guy who delivered the talk runs a company that only has home workers, so people working from their own office in their own home, and they don't come into the office every day. And he says that that's a good way to get more work done. It's good for business for a number of reasons. The one that really struck a chord with me was that you can control your own working environment, and I think that's a really nice thing. You can decide how you want your environment to be, how hot you want it to be, how cold, how noisy, how quiet, what kind of desk you want to sit at, all these things, how you want to set your room up, what environment is good for you to work in. And if you have your own home office, you can do that usually, unless you have no space in your home to do that. But in your own home, you have a lot more things under your control than you would in a big office with lots of people. And then he started moving on to other reasons, like if you employ people who work remotely, then you can employ anyone who has the skills that you need, rather than just the people that are in the town where your office happens to be based. So I won't go through his whole talk because you can watch it yourself. I've linked to it on my post, and so you can go and see it there. And I just thought it was really interesting because it seems to be a way that many companies are going. I certainly remember when I used to work for another company, I was allowed to work from home sometimes, and I loved it because then I didn't have the 3-hour traveling time to and from work. I liked my home office more than the office where I was working, because I did have an office set up because I was working on other things as well. I was never just doing my job. I had voluntary work and other things that I was doing, so I already had a desk set up, and I just found it so much more productive when I could work from home. Obviously now I do it all the time, so I'm a bit biased because it's the thing that I've chosen to do, but I think there are a lot of good things about working from home, so I wrote a blog post about that. It's on my private blog, so if you want to find out who the person is behind English with Kirsty, then I've also linked to the post on my private blog. That blog is not for English learners, it's just me writing about the things that I find interesting. So the focus of that blog is different from my English with Kirsty blog because it's a completely different audience. It's just a private thing. But I sometimes post on there about what I'm thinking and feeling and finding interesting at the time. So I wrote on there about this whole working from home idea and the advantages, 10 advantages that I found from working from home. But I know that this isn't for everyone. You know, some people think that, oh, what could be worse than sitting on your own all day? You'll be lonely, or there's no one to talk to, or there's no one to keep you on track, keep you motivated. For some people, I think they would really struggle with that, because the temptation to go and do something else would be too strong soon, and they would just hate it. They would feel isolated, and again, that's not a good way to feel, so it wouldn't be right for them. And also, if you have a job that involves a lot of face-to-face customer interaction, then working from home wouldn't be good either, because you wouldn't be able to see your customers. So I wrote some questions about this, which I will just read out to see if you have anything that you'd like to say about them. So I have 7 questions, and if you have answers to one or all of them, then share them and join in the discussion, either on the blog, or, as I said, you can send them to me directly, or you can send them as a voice message. But my questions are, if you could change one thing about your working environment, what would it be? So this is like where you are now, the office you're in now. Are there too many people in one office? Is it too noisy? Does it have a view of a car park instead of a view of something really inspiring? So if you could just change one small thing about the place where you work now, what would it be? And as well, a part of that is, how could you make things better for working or more comfortable? So it could be something that you would just find nicer, or it could be something that's directly related to business and to earning more money, that kind of thing. So either of those types of things are fine. Number 2, do you have the opportunity to work from home at the moment? So in your current job, can you work from home? And if so, do you enjoy it? If not, would you like to work from home? So do you have any experience of doing this, and what do you think about it? Is it something you would want to do part-time, or is it something you never want to do, or is it something you wish you could do more of? So number 3, in my blog post that I wrote, I talked a lot about the advantages that I found, and I found 10 of them. There could be more. Can you think of any disadvantages of working from home? And if so, what are they? Number 4, do you think it's a problem that managers can't see what their staff are doing if they're working from home? Number 5, what other types of working arrangements have you experienced, and what did you think of them? So this is like big rooms boxed off into lots of small cubicles, or big open plan offices, or working in an office on your own but as part of an office rather than your home office. So what other types of arrangements have you worked in, and what did you think about them? Number 6, do you think you'd be lonely if you weren't surrounded by colleagues, or do you like the peace and quiet? And number 7, what types of people or jobs would never be suitable for home working? So those are just some things to get people thinking about this topic. If you want to share your thoughts, then please do so. That would be really nice to hear what other people think. Otherwise, I hope that some of the vocabulary, either in my post, which is more of an informal chatty post, or in the TED Talk, which is more of a formal kind of short presentation, hope some of the vocabulary in there will help you to think more about this idea about home working or ideal working environments. And yeah, I hope it was useful. Have a good week and have fun learning English. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.